Apple Vision Pro, are they losing momentum with the developers?
Yeah, so there was some research that came out from a company called App Figures that showed the precipitous decline of Apple Vision Pro developers. It came out on, the first week, and you had 150 apps that were added. 325, the week of 325, there was a whopping one application added. And, I compare this to the early days of the iPhone, and it really was the inverse. You saw it just going up and to the right, as opposed to this giant cliff there. And by the way, let me just first say that I'm not anti Apple. I just expect a lot from Apple, given their resources, given their heritage. And, I don't like their monopolistic behavior that they've done. But, I have to say that Apple Vision Pro does do some pretty incredible things that its competition that costs a half or a third, it does better, right? And
no, I was just gonna say, don't you ever tell your kids, I expect more from you? Apple's the kid that you expect more from.
Totally, yeah, and I do. So, its video experience is pretty awesome. There were some really good reports from Anshul Sag on how good the PGA golf app was, but demand is falling off a cliff. And what I do is I look at the installed base. And for developers, right, you don't want to just throw money in, particularly when you're doing something dramatically different. And you can't just take an iPhone app and slap it into AVP and have a good experience, right? You have to have proximal understanding. You have to have a bit of a different UI and experience. So it looks like it takes an incredible amount of work to do that. And I think this is a statement of future demand for this model of AVP, right? AVP2 will be cheaper, it will be better, and AVP3 and AVP4, and maybe we will see a turnaround in that. I haven't booted up my AVP for 6 weeks. N equals 1, but there's not the killer app to go in and do it.
Yeah, Pat, I tweeted something. It was probably one of the most viral tweets in a long time when I sort of asked the question, what you're seeing in the data is, I think, what we're feeling without needing to do a lot of assessment, and that's lost interest. I mean, you remember the week or two after it came out, people were driving up and getting out of their cars and they were wearing them, and you were going to coffee shops and you're seeing people, and everybody was talking about taking their first flight with their AVP. So all this sort of front end, early adopting influence personas were out and about, and they were largely raving about how amazing it was. But then after 2 weeks, it just started to fade. And I just asked the question. And of course, it was controversial, but I mean, even Robert Scoble retweeted and shared that he was seeing, and he's always been a pretty prolific Apple fanboy.
And in fact, he's renamed it to the cult, I think,
And so, the long story short is that, this is like a beta product that was made generally available. You have a small subset of users. You do have some really interesting and exciting use cases. It does not seem that the wider public is convinced that it's a good use of $3,500. You have one, Pat. So, I'd be interested. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I don't know what's going on. I'd be interested, how many times have you picked it up, in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks? And feel free to share your use cases with me and the audience.
Yeah, video is the biggest use case.
All right, so you're watching movies. And
yeah,
so
YouTube, even though YouTube doesn't have a native app, watching videos on it with YouTube are pretty good. I watched a a couple movies on it, and it is absolutely captivating. Now it's super annoying that, you know, you're literally sitting in bed watching a movie. You have to have the lights on, otherwise none of the proximal technologies work. And anytime you move your hands come into the frame. So it's just it's super annoying.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was in a car the other day that had that gesturing on the panel, and like someone that talks with their hands, the radio station keeps changing, the volume kept going up, it kept swiping, you know, because the idea of gesturing is kind of a good idea until you actually meet someone like me that
Yeah.
talks like this. All right, so bottom line is a lot of work to do for Apple.